My parents looked straight through me at their luxury gala and said, "Know your place." No seat was reserved for me. My name was not on the list. My brother's perfect wife, Victoria, leaned in close, the cloying scent of her expensive perfume filling the small space between us. She wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes and whispered, "Oh, Eleanor, we only save seats for those who bring value to the table." My brother did not defend me. He simply shrugged, adjusted his cufflinks, and told me to stop embarrassing them. So I stayed silent. I stood exactly where they pushed me. I let them pretend they did not even know me. What they did not know was that I was not there to be seen. I was there because someone else asked me to come, someone they had been trying desperately to impress all night. Seconds later, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Conversations stalled. People turned. A billionaire walked past my parents as if they did not exist. He stopped in front of me, shook my hand, and said, "We've been waiting to meet you, boss." The entire room froze. At that moment, my family realized something terrifying. They hadn't humiliated a nobody. They had humiliated the only person in the room who actually held power. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. The gala was one of those charity events where the wealthy gather to convince themselves they are generous. The air in the ballroom was thick with the heavy, cloying scent of expensive lilies and generational wealth, a fragrance designed to make anyone with a modest bank account feel short of breath. Instead of warm conversation, the room was filled with the sharp, metallic clinking of silver against fine china. A rhythmic sound. It felt more like a countdown than a celebration. Every laugh sounded rehearsed. Each one echoed off the high ceilings with a hollow glass-like quality. The light didn't just illuminate the room, it felt predatory. It reflected off every polished surface to expose even the smallest flaw in a person's attire or posture. Men stood in clusters discussing stock portfolios as casually as the weather, their eyes constantly scanning for someone more important to talk to. My family had organized this event. Well, technically, they were co-sponsors. My father loved to attach our family name to anything that made him look important. The Morrison Foundation Gala. It sounded noble, but it was mostly a networking opportunity disguised as philanthropy. I arrived alone. I wore a simple black dress with no designer label and no flashy jewelry. I had learned long ago that my family did not want me to stand out. They wanted me to disappear. The woman at the reception desk squinted at her tablet when I gave her my name. Morrison. I don't see Morrison on the guest list. Are you with one of the catering companies? I almost laughed. I'm here as a guest, I said calmly. Before she could question me further, my mother's voice cut through. She's not on the list because she wasn't invited. My mother stood there in her emerald gown looking at me like a stain on an expensive carpet, something to be cleaned up and forgotten. "Mom," I said, "just one word, testing the waters." "Don't make a scene," she hissed. "Your father is talking to the mayor. We can't have you wandering around confusing people." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she pieced together the family drama unfolding in front of her. My mother grabbed my elbow and pulled me to the side away from the entrance. "Why are you here? I specifically did not send you an invitation." "I was invited," I said, "just not by you." Her eyes narrowed. "By whom?" I did not answer. Silence was more powerful than words with my mother. She hated not knowing things, and she hated it even more when I refused to give her the satisfaction. "Go wait by the service entrance," she said finally. "If you insist on being here, at least stay out of sight. We have important guests tonight." Important guests. That phrase had defined my entire childhood. My brother Derek was always paraded in front of important guests. Derek the lawyer, Derek the golden child, Derek who married Victoria, the perfect socialite with the perfect pedigree. I was the other one, the daughter who did not follow the path, the one who refused to go to law school, the one who disappeared for years and came back different. I was quieter and less willing to beg for scraps of affection. I found a spot near the wall, half hidden behind a pillar. From there I could see everything: my father shaking hands with politicians, my mother gliding through the crowd as if she owned every person in the room, Derek and Victoria holding court near the champagne fountain, accepting compliments like they were collecting taxes, Victoria caught my eye at one point. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. She whispered something to Derek, who glanced my way and shrugged. A few minutes later, the family gathered for a photograph. Victoria turned and waved me over. For a moment, I thought maybe she was being kind. "Could you move to the left?" she said when I approached. "You're in the background of the shot." My mother nodded. "Yes, dear, step aside. This is for the Foundation's annual report." I stepped aside. I always stepped aside. A waiter passed by and gave me a sympathetic look. I took a glass of water from his tray and thanked him. My phone buzzed in my clutch, a text message from a number I knew well. "I'm arriving in 10 minutes. Everything is ready. Are you sure about this?" I typed back one word, "Yes." I had spent 3 years building something in silence, 18-hour days, making decisions that would have made my family's heads spin if they had known, but they never asked. They assumed I was failing to meet their expectations. The MC announced the silent auction. People began drifting toward the tables. My mother was with the mayor's wife. My father was laughing too loudly at a partner's joke. And then I heard it, the shift in conversation. The sudden hush that spreads through a room when someone truly powerful arrives. "Is that him?" someone whispered. "The Morrison family has been trying to get a meeting with him for months." I knew who they were talking about. Marcus Hale, the founder of one of the largest investment funds in the country. He could make or break companies with a single call. My father practically sprinted across the room. My mother was right behind him. Derek straightened his tie and Victoria checked her reflection in a passing mirror. They all wanted his attention. And then he walked right past them. He walked past the mayor, past the CEO of the largest bank in the state, and past everyone who had positioned themselves to intercept him. He walked directly to me. He approached the woman standing half-hidden behind a pillar holding a glass of water, wearing a simple black dress with no label. He extended his hand. His voice was clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. "We've been waiting to meet you, boss. The board is ready whenever you are." The entire room froze. My father's champagne glass hung halfway to his lips. My mother's smile turned to stone. Victoria's perfect composure cracked like thin ice. Derek stared at me as if he had never seen me before. In that moment, they all realized the same terrifying truth. They had spent the entire evening treating me like a housemaid. They had told me to know my place, and they had no idea that my place was at the very top of the hierarchy they had been desperately trying to climb. I looked at my family. I saw the confusion, the disbelief, and the dawning horror. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply nodded to the man in front of me. "Thank you for coming," I said. "We have a lot to discuss." I walked away with him, leaving my family standing in the wreckage of everything they thought they knew about me. They still thought I was the useless one. That misunderstanding would cost them everything. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. I counted. 4 seconds of complete stillness while the room tried to process what had just happened. Then the whispers started low at first, like wind rustling through leaves, then louder and more urgent. Did he just call her boss? Who is she? I thought she was with the catering staff. I did not turn around. I walked beside Marcus Hale, one of the most powerful investors on the East Coast, keeping my eyes forward. Behind me, I could feel my family's stares like heat on my back. "That was quite an entrance," Marcus murmured. "Your family looks like they've seen a ghost." "They've spent years pretending I don't exist," I replied. "Tonight they're learning that ghosts can be very inconvenient." We had barely made it 10 steps before my mother's heels clicked rapidly on the marble floor. "Excuse me." Her voice was bright, too bright, the voice she used when trying to control a situation. "Mr. Hale, I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Patricia Morrison. My husband and I are co-chairs of tonight's foundation." Marcus stopped and turned. His expression was polite but distant, the kind of look you give someone who is wasting your time. "Mrs. Morrison," he said. "Yes, I received your invitations. Several of them, actually." My mother's smile flickered. She had sent him at least a dozen requests for meetings over the past 6 months. He had declined every single one. "We would be honored if you could join our table for dinner," she continued. I'd love to discuss some investment opportunities that might interest you." "I appreciate the offer," Marcus said, "but I'm afraid I already have dinner plans." He glanced at me. "Eleanor and I have a working session scheduled." "Eleanor, not your daughter, not this young woman." He used my name as an equal. My mother's composure finally cracked. "Eleanor." She turned to me, and for the first time that night, she actually looked at me. Really looked. "What is going on here?" Before I could answer, my father appeared. Derek and Victoria were right behind him, forming a wall of family concern that had nothing to do with actual concern for me. "There seems to be some confusion," my father said. His voice was calm, but I could see the vein pulsing in his forehead. He hated being confused in public. He hated being excluded even more. "Mr. Hale, I'm not sure what my daughter has told you, but I can assure you that any business dealings would be better conducted through our family's firm. Eleanor doesn't have experience with..." "With what?" Marcus interrupted. His tone was still polite, but there was steel underneath. "With founding a company, with building one of the fastest-growing tech platforms in the country, with managing a team of 300 employees." He paused, letting the silence hang. "Because she seems to have quite a bit of experience with all of those things." The color drained from my mother's face. Derek stepped forward. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. Eleanor doesn't run a company. She's..." He stopped. He actually didn't know what I did. "She's what?" Marcus asked. "A housemaid, a caterer." "That's certainly how your family has been treating her tonight." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Victoria stepped forward, her smile as flawless and rigid as porcelain. She met Marcus's gaze with practiced ease and said, "Mr. Hale, surely this is just a charming little misunderstanding. Why don't we all sit down somewhere private and sort this out? I'm sure Eleanor would feel much more secure having her family's prestige behind whatever project she's been working on." She reached out to touch his arm, a calculated display of social grace. Marcus took a half step back, neatly avoiding the contact. "I prefer to speak with decision-makers directly," he said, "and the decision-maker in this room is Eleanor." He turned to me. "The board members are waiting in the private lounge. Shall we?" I nodded. "Yes, let's go." My father grabbed my elbow. "Eleanor, stop. You can't just walk away from us." I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. "I've been walking away from you for years, Dad. You just never noticed because you weren't watching." I pulled my arm free and followed Marcus. Behind me, I heard my mother hissing at my father. "Did you know about this?" "She never told us because we never asked," Derek said quietly. It was the first honest thing he had said all night. The private lounge was smaller than the main ballroom, but just as elegant. 3 men and 2 women, the board of Nexus Capital, stood when we entered. "Ms. Morrison," one of them said. "Margaret Miller, who ran their core operations." "Thank you for agreeing to meet tonight. We know this venue is unconventional." "Margaret," I said, shaking her hand, "I appreciate you all making the trip." We sat down to discuss the acquisition. My company, Meridian Technologies, had developed a software platform that had grown from a startup in my apartment to a major player in the enterprise market. Nexus Capital wanted in. The deal we were negotiating would value my company at $800 million. $800 million. My family had spent years telling me I was a failure. They had no idea I had been building an empire while they were busy excluding me from their dinner parties. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, Marcus walked me back toward the main ballroom. "Your family is still out there," he warned. "They've been watching the door like hawks." "I know. You could avoid them. Leave through the service entrance." I smiled slightly. That's what they've always wanted me to do. Disappear. Not tonight. We emerged. My family spotted me immediately. My mother marched over. "Eleanor, we need to talk. Now." "No," I said. "We don't. You can't just dismiss us like you dismissed me." I met her eyes. "Like you told me to wait by the service entrance. Like you left me out of the family photo." I kept my voice low. Every word landed like a stone. I've spent my entire life being dismissed by this family. Tonight is different. Victoria pushed forward, her eyes flashing with a mix of fear and condescension. "You're being so unnecessarily dramatic, Eleanor. You clearly don't understand how the real world operates. A girl your age playing at being a CEO, it's cute, really. But let Derek look over the contracts before you sign something that makes the Morrison name look foolish. The contracts are already agreed upon, I said, and I don't need Derek's help. I haven't needed any of you for a very long time. A man approached someone from Marcus's team and handed me an envelope. Ms. Morrison, the preliminary term sheet for your review. I took the envelope. My father stared at it as if it might explode. What is that? What terms? That's none of your concern. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Not anger. Fear. He was beginning to understand that I was not the person he thought I was. Eleanor, he said carefully, whatever is happening here, we should discuss it as a family. We can help you. We can advise you. You want to help me? I tilted my head. Where was that help when I was starting my company and you told me I was throwing my life away? Where was that advice when I asked for a small loan and you said I didn't deserve family money? Where was any of this concern when you stopped inviting me to Christmas dinner? The words hung between us. My mother's face was red. That's not fair. We were trying to motivate you. You were trying to erase me, I said, and you almost succeeded. I turned to leave. Wait, Derek said. He stepped toward me, and for a moment he looked like the brother I remembered from childhood, before Victoria, before our parents turned him into a showpiece. Eleanor, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him for a long moment. Because you never asked Derek. Not once in 3 years did you ask me how I was doing. You were too busy being the golden child to notice that your sister was building something real. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking away. The room felt different now. The whispers were no longer about dismissal. They were whispers of curiosity, of respect, of sudden recognition. I was no longer the invisible Morrison daughter. I was someone they wanted to know. At the exit, my phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. 3 journalists have already called asking for interviews. What should I tell them? I typed back. Tell them the Morrison family's housemaid is unavailable for comment. I walked out into the night, leaving the hierarchy behind. The morning after the gala, I woke to 47 missed calls. 31 from my mother, 12 from my father, and 4 from Derek. Victoria predictably had remained silent. I ignored them all. I didn't need to hear their panic to know it was happening. The story had already breached their social circles. The invisible Morrison daughter was the CEO Marcus Hale had been waiting for. The housemaid was actually the power in the room. The first real confrontation came at my office later that morning. I was in a leadership meeting when my assistant knocked, looking nervous. Ms. Morrison, your brother is here. He says it's urgent. Tell him I'm in a meeting, I said. He can wait. I made him wait 45 minutes. It was petty, perhaps, but a fraction of the time I had spent waiting for them to notice me. When I finally entered the conference room, Derek was pacing by the window. He looked exhausted, the dark circles under his eyes, a sharp contrast to his usual polished image. Eleanor, he started, his voice strained. You didn't answer our calls. I've been busy running a company, Derek, something you only realized I possessed 12 hours ago. Look, things are getting out of control, he said, ignoring the jab. People are talking. Victoria's charity board is asking questions. Dad's partners are making jokes about hidden heirs. This is damaging our reputation. I leaned back, unimpressed. Your reputation, Derek, not mine. You're still a Morrison. Am I? According to Mom, I wasn't even invited. According to Victoria, I was there to serve. You didn't care about the Morrison name when I was being treated like garbage. You only care now because the garbage turned out to be gold. Derek flinched. He had no defense. Mom and Dad want to talk, properly. They want to understand how this happened. They want to understand how to use my success to fix their image, I corrected. I owe them nothing. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. I showed him out before he could say another word. But Derek was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, Margaret Miller from Nexus Capital stopped by unannounced. "Your father has been reaching out to Marcus," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "He's trying to insert his firm's legal services into the acquisition deal. He even implied you might be in over your head and could use his experienced guidance." The audacity was impressive. He didn't know a single line of our code, yet he was already trying to arbitrage my achievement. "And Marcus?" I asked. "Marcus told him that if he wanted to support you, he should start by treating you like a daughter instead of a liability." Margaret smiled thinly. "But you should be prepared. The business press has caught the scent of the family drama. Richard Hayes from the Tribune is already asking for a profile." The world was starting to ask questions my family never bothered to ask. They were finally learning that ignoring someone doesn't make them disappear. It just means you aren't paying attention when they become powerful. Sunday arrived whether I wanted it to or not. I had not agreed to dinner. I had not responded to my mother's increasingly desperate texts. But somehow I found myself parked outside my childhood home at 6 p.m, staring at the house where I had grown up feeling like a stranger. The Morrison estate was impressive by any standard, a Georgian colonial on 4 acres of manicured lawn. My father had bought it when Derek was born, declaring it the perfect place to raise a family. What he meant was the perfect place to project an image of success. I had not been inside in 2 years. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in one of her cashmere sweaters, her face arranged in an expression of warmth that did not reach her eyes. "Eleanor, you came." She stepped aside to let me in. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about your family entirely." I walked past her into the foyer. Everything looked exactly the same marble floors, the same chandelier, and the same family portraits on the wall that did not include me. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "In the study. He's very eager to speak with you." My mother closed the door behind me. "We all are." I followed her through the house. Derek and Victoria were already in the living room sitting on the antique sofa that my mother loved to brag about. They looked up when I entered. "Eleanor." Derek stood. "Thanks for coming." Victoria remained seated. Her smile was the same one she had given me at the Gala, polished, cold, and calculating. "Let's all go to the dining room," my mother suggested. "Your father will join us there." The dining room table could seat 16 people. Tonight there were only 5 places set, all clustered at one end. My mother had probably agonized over the seating arrangement, where to put the daughter she had spent years ignoring how to position herself for maximum control over the conversation. I chose my own seat before she could direct me. I sat across from Victoria, not next to anyone. My father entered a moment later. He looked older than I remembered. The gala had aged him. The embarrassment and the loss of control had taken their toll. "Eleanor," he sat at the head of the table. "I'm glad you're here. Are you—" He ignored the edge in my voice. "Of course. We're family. That's what tonight is about, reconnecting, understanding each other." The first course arrived soup. It was my mother's attempt at creating normalcy, as if we could pretend the last 3 years had not happened over butternut squash bisque. "So," my father began, his tone deliberately casual, "this company of yours, Meridian Technologies, I've been reading about it. Impressive growth numbers. Thank you. I didn't realize you had such a head for business." He smiled, but it was the smile of a man trying to close a deal. "Where did you learn all that?" "Certainly not from anything we taught you." I set down my spoon. I learned by doing. I learned by failing and trying again. I learned from people who believed in me when my own family didn't. And the air grew cold. "That's not fair," my mother interjected. "We always believed in you. We just wanted you to follow a stable path, law, finance, something respectable." "Something like what Derek did," I clarified. "Something that reflected well on the family." "What's wrong with wanting our children to succeed?" my father asked. "Nothing, except you defined success by your standards, not mine. And when I didn't fit that definition, you stopped seeing me as a daughter and started seeing me as an embarrassment." Victoria cleared her throat, her wine glass poised with performative grace. "Perhaps we could focus on the present instead of relitigating the past," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of genuine warmth. The point is, you've managed to achieve a certain level of visibility. As Morrisons, your success is naturally our success. It's only logical that we align our brands. I looked at her. Align our brands? As a family. She smiled that perfect, empty smile. We're all Morrisons. Surely there's a way we can support each other. And there it was, the real reason for this dinner. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want to support me. The same family that excluded me from Christmas dinner for the past 3 years. The same family that told me to know my place at your charity gala. The same family that left me out of every photo, every celebration, and every acknowledgment of the Morrison name. I paused. That family wants to support me now that I'm successful. My mother's face reddened. You're twisting things. Am I? Tell me, Mom. When was the last time you called me before the gala, before you realized I was worth something? She did not answer. That's what I thought. My father leaned forward. Eleanor, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. We made mistakes. But that doesn't change the fact that we're family. Blood matters. And in the business world, family ties can be advantageous for everyone. I almost admired his directness. He was not even pretending anymore. He wanted access to my success. He wanted to attach the Morrison name to my company. He wanted to benefit from what I had built. Dad, I said, I've spent my entire adult life proving that I don't need family ties to succeed. I built my company with no help from you, no introductions, no funding, no endorsements. Everything I have, I earned. No one's saying you didn't earn it, Derek said. He had been quiet throughout the meal, watching the conversation like a tennis match. But Eleanor, think about what you could do with our support, our connections. Dad knows everyone in the business community. Mom's charity networks could open doors for your company. Victoria's on 6 boards that could... Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Derek's mouth closed. You're not offering to support me, I said. You're offering to use me. You want access to what I've built so you can repair the damage the gala did to your reputation. You want to stand next to me and pretend you were always proud of me, always behind me, always believed in me. I shook my head. But we all know that's not true. Victoria's smile had disappeared. You're being dramatic. No, Victoria. I'm being accurate. There's a difference. My father's face had hardened. I think you're forgetting who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who raised me to believe I was worthless, who compared me unfavorably to my brother at every opportunity, who stopped inviting me to family events because I made them uncomfortable. I stood up from the table. I'm talking to strangers who share my last name. Sit down, my father commanded. No. The word hung in the air, simple and final. I had never said no to my father before, not like this, not with such finality. I came here tonight because I thought maybe, just maybe you wanted to actually reconnect, I said. But this isn't a reconciliation. This is a negotiation. And I'm not interested in negotiating with people who only value me when I'm useful to them. I turned and walked toward the door. Eleanor, wait. Derek followed me into the hallway. Please, don't leave like this. I stopped, but did not turn around. Like what, Derek? Like someone who finally stopped waiting for her family to love her. That's not... He exhaled sharply. I know we messed up. I know I messed up. But doesn't family get a second chance? I finally turned to face him. Family gets second chances when they've earned them, when they've apologized, when they've changed. You haven't done any of those things. I met his eyes. You came to my office demanding I fix Mom and Dad's reputation. You came to this dinner hoping to benefit from my success. Not once have any of you asked me how I'm doing, what my life is like, whether I'm happy. I paused. Not once. He had no response. I walked to the front door and opened it. The night air was cool on my face. Eleanor, my father's voice came from behind me. He had followed us to the foyer. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to come crawling back. I looked at him over my shoulder. I never expected that, Dad. That's the whole point. I walked out into the darkness and closed the door behind me. As I drove away from the house, I felt something I had not felt in years. Freedom. Not the freedom of success, money, or power. The freedom of finally letting go. The article came out on Tuesday. I did not give an interview. I had not spoken to any journalists. But somehow the Tribune had pieced together enough information to run a story that would change everything. The headline read, "Tech CEO treated like servant at own family's gala inside the Morrison family drama." My assistant brought me the newspaper that morning. Her face was pale. "Ms. Morrison, you need to see this." I read the article in my office with the door closed. The journalist had done his homework. He had interviewed gala attendees who witnessed my family's treatment of me. He had tracked down former colleagues who remembered me from my early startup days. He had even obtained a copy of the guest list showing that my name had been deliberately removed by my mother. But the most damaging part was the quotes from unnamed sources close to the Morrison family. They always treated Eleanor like she didn't exist. Derek was the golden child. Eleanor was the embarrassment they hoped would disappear. Patricia Morrison told her friends that Eleanor was mentally unstable, that she had some kind of breakdown. It was all lies to explain why they never included her. They tried to get meetings with Marcus Hale for months. When he walked past them to shake Eleanor's hand, Patricia actually fainted. They had to revive her with smelling salts. That last part was probably an exaggeration, but the point was clear. My family's carefully constructed image was crumbling. My phone rang. It was my mother. I answered. "What have you done?" Her voice was shrill. "Did you talk to that reporter? Did you tell him those lies?" "I didn't talk to anyone, Mom. You humiliated me in front of 200 people. What did you think would happen?" She was silent for a moment. Then, "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching us suffer." "No, I'm not. But I'm not going to apologize for existing, for succeeding, for not being the failure you always expected me to be." I hung up before she could respond. The fallout was immediate and widespread. By noon, my father's office had received dozens of calls from clients and partners. Some were curious, others were concerned. A few were already cutting ties. Derek's law firm issued a statement distancing themselves from the Morrison family situation. Victoria's charity board called an emergency meeting. By the end of the day, she had been quietly asked to step down from 3 committees, and my phone did not stop ringing. Interview requests, partnership proposals, and speaking invitations flooded in. The article had painted me as a Cinderella figure, the underestimated daughter who rose above her family's contempt to build an empire. People loved that story, but I was not interested in capitalizing on my family's downfall. I released a brief statement through my PR team. Meridian Technologies is focused on our work and our customers. I have no comment on personal family matters. I wish my family well. It was diplomatic and gracious, and it made my family look even worse by comparison. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. The doorman called up to announce that a Victoria Morrison was in the lobby, demanding to see me. I told him to send her up. Victoria arrived, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smudged, and she had clearly been crying. She stormed into my apartment, her eyes wild with a mix of fury and desperation. "How could you?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "How could you do this to us?" "I didn't do anything, Victoria. The world did it because you treated me like garbage in front of witnesses. Don't play innocent. You planned this. You wanted to destroy us." I walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. "If I wanted to destroy you, I would have done it years ago. I had every opportunity, every reason." I turned to face her. "But I didn't, because unlike you, I don't base my self-worth on tearing other people down." "Your mother is in the hospital," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "She collapsed this afternoon. Stress, anxiety. The doctors say she needs rest. This is crushing her." For a moment, I felt something, a twinge of the old guilt. Then I remembered the years of being ignored, the holidays excluded, and the constant message that I was not enough. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully, "but her health is not my responsibility, and neither is the family's reputation." "How can you be so cold?" "I'm not cold, Victoria. I'm tired." I set down my glass. I spent my entire life trying to earn my family's love, and no matter what I did, it was never enough. When you finally saw me, you didn't feel proud. You felt threatened. You felt like I was stealing something that belonged to you. Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Her eyes narrowed as she looked around my apartment, searching for a price tag on everything: the art, the view, the sheer evidence of my independence. Her mask finally crackled, revealing the cold, transactional soul beneath. "What do you want?" she asked quietly, her tone shifting from outrage to a sharp, icy negotiation. "Everyone has a price, Eleanor. Just tell me what it will take to make this go away. Is it a seat on a board, a penthouse? Just give me the number so we can put this unpleasantness behind us." "Nothing. I don't want anything from you." "Everyone wants something." "Not me. Not anymore." I walked to the door and opened it. "I think you should leave." Victoria gathered what remained of her dignity and walked to the threshold. She paused, looking at me with a hatred that was finally honest. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." I closed the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment. The war was over. I had not fired a single shot. I had simply stopped protecting people who had never protected me. I had let the truth speak for itself, and the truth was devastating. 2 weeks after the article, the Morrison family social calendar had quietly collapsed. I heard about it secondhand from people who thought I would want to know. The gala circuit that my parents had dominated for decades had begun to close its doors. Invitations that had once been automatic were now conspicuously absent. Phone calls went unreturned, and lunch meetings were canceled. The power they had spent their lives cultivating was slipping away. And I had not lifted a finger. The first major loss came at a charity auction my mother had co-chaired for 15 years. The organization called to inform her that they were restructuring their board. They thanked her for her years of service and wished her well in her future endeavors. They did not invite her to the next meeting. My father's business network was slower to erode, but the cracks were forming. Partners who had once sought his advice now took meetings with his competitors. Investment opportunities that would have crossed his desk first now went elsewhere. The Morrison name no longer opened doors. It was fascinating watching it happen from the outside. I had not attended any social events since the gala. I had kept my head down, focused on my company, and let the world draw its own conclusions. And the conclusions were damning. In every conversation about the Morrisons, the same story emerged: the family that humiliated their own daughter, the parents who erased her from their lives, the golden child and his perfect wife who stood by while their sister was treated like a servant. The narrative had taken on a life of its own. Derek called me on a Friday afternoon. I was in a board meeting, so I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it later, his voice sounded hollow. "Eleanor, it's me. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Not about Mom and Dad, not about the article, just about us." A long pause. "I remember when we were kids, before everything got complicated. You used to look up to me. I used to protect you." Another pause. "I don't know when I stopped. I don't know when I became the person who stood by while they hurt you. But I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Please call me back." I saved the message, but did not call him back. The following week brought more fallout. Victoria's designer friends had stopped inviting her to their exclusive events. Her Instagram following, once a point of pride, began to decline as brands quietly distanced themselves. She tried to pivot. She posted about mental health awareness, about family struggles, and about the importance of supporting loved ones. The comments were brutal. Where was this support for your sister-in-law? Easy to talk about family when you're trying to save your image. This feels fake. Try again. I did not post anything. I did not engage with the public narrative. I simply continued to build my company and live my life. But the universe was not done with the Morrison family. The final blow came at the annual Chamber of Commerce dinner, an event my father had attended for 30 years. He arrived in his best suit, expecting to network and rebuild. Instead, he found himself standing alone. I was not there to witness it, but multiple people told me about it afterward, how my father approached his usual circle of business contacts and found their conversations already complete, how he tried to join discussions that politely shut him out, and how he spent the evening nursing a single glass of whiskey while the room moved around him like water flowing around a stone. He left early. It was the first time anyone could remember him leaving a social event before the last speech. When he got home, my mother was waiting with news of her own. Her oldest friend, a woman she had known since college, had called to say that she would not be able to attend my mother's birthday lunch next month, scheduling conflicts. Nothing personal. Everything was personal. The phone rang at my apartment that evening. It was Derek again. This time I answered. "Eleanor." His voice was raw. "I don't know what to do." "About what?" "About any of this. About Mom and Dad. About Victoria. About the fact that our family is falling apart, and I feel as if it's my fault." "It's not your fault, Derek. Not entirely." "Then whose fault is it?" I considered my answer carefully. It's everyone's fault and no one's fault. It's the result of years of choices. Choices to favor one child over another, choices to value image over authenticity, and choices to punish nonconformity instead of celebrating it. I didn't choose those things. Didn't you? Every time you accepted their praise without questioning why I didn't receive any, every time you participated in family events without asking why I wasn't there, and every time you chose silence over speaking up. I paused. Those were choices, Derek, small ones, but they added up. He was quiet for a long time. "Can we meet?" he asked finally. "Not at the house, not with Mom and Dad. Just us, like it used to be." "I don't know if we can go back to how it used to be." "Then can we start something new?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Maybe," I said, "but not yet. I need more time." "Okay." He accepted it without argument. "I'll wait." After we hung up, I sat in my living room and watched the city lights below. The room had stopped listening to my family. The social power they had cultivated for decades had evaporated like morning dew. But I did not feel victorious. I felt tired and a little sad. Because underneath all the betrayal and the hurt and the years of exclusion, there had once been something real, a family. Imperfect, yes. Dysfunctional, certainly. But a family nonetheless. And now that family was in ruins, I had not destroyed them. They had destroyed themselves. But watching it happen brought me no joy, only the quiet recognition that some things once broken can never be repaired. The Nexus Capital deal closed on a Thursday morning. I sat in the mahogany-lined conference room of their headquarters, surrounded by a phalanx of legal counsel and senior executives. There were no grand speeches, only the quiet, efficient scratch of fountain pens on heavy paper. We were finalizing the Series C investment, round a move that officially valued Meridian Technologies at $850 million. More than the valuation, it was the voting rights and board composition that settled the power dynamic. I had maintained a controlling interest. I was the one with the final authority. Marcus Hale pushed the final signature page toward me. His eyes met mine with a look of professional kinship. "The term sheet is finalized, Eleanor," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the room. "The board has given its unanimous approval. As of this moment, the capital injection is cleared for wire transfer." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I simply glanced at my lead counsel, who gave a brief, sharp nod. "The liquidity preferences and anti-dilution clauses are exactly where we discussed," I said calmly. My voice was steady, the voice of someone who didn't need to explain herself. "I'm comfortable moving forward under these terms." "Congratulations, Ms. Morrison," one of the board members added, a man known for being impossible to impress. "The final authority rests with you. We're looking forward to seeing how you scale the international operations." "Thank you," I replied. Just 2 words. No boast, no explanation. The news hit the financial wires within the hour. By the time I reached my car, the Wall Street Journal had already published the headline, Meridian Technologies hits unicorn valuation in Nexus-led round. My phone was a constant vibration of notifications. Congratulations from mentors, industry peers, and people who had ignored my emails 3 years ago. My family remained silent. I felt the silence like a cold draft, but I pushed it aside. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment for my core leadership team, the people who had been in the trenches with me when we were surviving on nothing but caffeine and private beta testing. Maya, my COO, raised a glass of vintage champagne. To Eleanor, who kept the controlling interest when everyone told her to sell, who built a unicorn while the world looked the other way. The room toasted. I felt a brief flash of genuine warmth. "We built this," I said. "The equity belongs to the people in this room." Then my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Congratulations on the deal. I saw the WSJ alert. I'm proud of you." I stared at the screen for a long moment. He was proud now that the valuation was public record, now that my success was vetted and verified by the most powerful institutions in the country. The next morning, the official claim arrived, a formal letter on heavy cream stationery hand-delivered to my office. "Dear Eleanor, we write to congratulate you on your recent business success. Your achievement reflects well on the Morrison family name. We would like to propose a meeting to discuss how we might support each other going forward. There are opportunities for strategic partnership. We believe working together would present a united front." I read it once, noted the lack of an apology, and recognized the strategy. It wasn't a letter from parents. It was an attempt at a reputation arbitrage. They wanted to borrow my new institutional credibility to fix their own sinking brand. I called Sandra in. "Draft a reply, 3 sentences. What would you like to say, Ms. Morrison? Thank you for the letter. I have no interest in any cross-promotional ventures or partnerships with the Morrison family firms. I wish you well." "Should I include warm regards?" Sandra asked. "No," I said, looking out at the city I now had a stake in. "Just my name, Eleanor." The truth was now official. I wasn't just a daughter who didn't fit in. I was a founder with a fiduciary responsibility to a multi-million-dollar empire. And for the first time, the hole where my family should have been didn't feel like a wound. It just felt like empty space in a room I had outgrown. The Morrison family imploded on a Sunday. I was not there to witness it. I heard about it later from Derek in a phone conversation that lasted 3 hours. It started at brunch. My parents had invited Derek and Victoria to discuss strategy, how to recover from the social exile, how to repair the family image, and how to approach me again from a different angle. But somewhere between the mimosas and the eggs, Benedict Victoria finally cracked. After years of performing, years of being the perfect wife and the flawless socialite, the woman who held the Morrison family together through sheer force of will finally came undone. "This is your fault," she shrieked at my mother, her voice losing its melodic polish for the first time. "You and your obsession with image. You and your favoritism. You treated Eleanor terribly, and now we're all paying for it," my mother shouted back. Words were said that could never be unsaid. In a final desperate act of defiance, Victoria threw her engagement ring across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp metallic clink and announced to the room that she wanted a divorce. Derek sat there stunned, watching his life unravel in real time. My father tried to restore order, but his authority had long since eroded. No one listened to him anymore. His voice, once commanding, sounded hollow and desperate. By the end of brunch, Victoria had stormed out. My mother had locked herself in her bedroom. My father was drinking whiskey at 11 in the morning, and Derek was left sitting alone at a table covered in untouched food and shattered glass. He called me that evening. "Victoria's leaving me," he said. His voice was flat and defeated. "I'm sorry, Derek." "Are you—" I thought about it. "Yes, actually I am. Not because I'll miss Victoria, but because I know what it feels like to lose something you thought would always be there. I don't know what to do." He sounded like a child. "Everything I built my life around is falling apart, the family, the image, the marriage." He laughed bitterly. "I spent so many years being the golden child, and now I realize I was just playing a role A role nobody asked me to play, but nobody stopped me from playing either. You can build something new, I said, something that's actually yours. How I don't even know who I am without all of that. That's the journey, Derek, finding out who you are when you're not performing for anyone. We talked for a long time about our childhood, the ways our parents had shaped us, and the damage we had done to each other without realizing it. For the first time, I felt like I was talking to my brother, not the golden child, not the favored son, just Derek. He was a man who was lost and scared and trying to figure out his next step. "I'm sorry," he said eventually. "For all of it. For not standing up for you, for not seeing what was happening, for being so focused on my own position that I didn't notice when they were erasing you." "I know." "Do you forgive me?" I considered the question. "I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't something I can just give. It's something I have to build day by day." "Fair enough." After we hung up, I thought about the masks we all wear, the roles we play to survive our families, and the identities we construct to protect ourselves from rejection. Victoria's mask had finally shattered. Derek's was cracking. My parents' masks were still firmly in place, but they were performing for an empty room. And me, I had spent years building my own mask, the successful businesswoman who did not need anyone, the independent CEO who was above petty family drama, and the strong survivor who had transcended her painful past. But underneath that mask was still a woman who wished her mother had hugged her more, who wished her father had noticed her achievements before they were validated by the world, and who wished her family had been a family. I did not need them anymore. That was true. But needing and wanting were different things, and sometimes late at night, I still wanted. 3 months after the gala, my mother made one final attempt. She showed up at my office unannounced, dressed in her most elegant suit and carrying a gift bag from an expensive jewelry store. Sandra intercepted her in the lobby. "Mrs. Morrison, Ms. Morrison is in meetings all day. If you'd like to schedule an appointment." "I don't need an appointment to see my own daughter." I heard about the confrontation and made a decision. I would see her one last time. She entered my office like a queen, surveying conquered territory, looking at the furniture, the view, and the evidence of my success. "This is quite impressive," she said. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you." She set the gift bag on my desk. "I brought you something, a peace offering." I did not touch it. "Eleanor." She sat down across from me, arranging herself with practiced grace. "We need to talk, really talk, like mother and daughter." "I'm listening." "I know things have been difficult between us. I know you feel that your father and I didn't support you the way we should have." She paused. "But you have to understand, we only wanted what was best for you. We pushed you because we saw your potential. We were hard on you because we knew you could do great things. That's not what happened, and we both know it." Her composure flickered. "Excuse me. You didn't push me because you saw my potential. You ignored me because I didn't fit your vision of what a Morrison daughter should be. You favored Derek because he was easy, he followed the path, and he made you look good." I kept my voice calm. I was difficult. I asked questions. I went my own way. And instead of celebrating that, you treated it as a betrayal. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. My mother's eyes hardened. "I didn't come here to be lectured." "Why did you come?" She reached for the gift bag and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a diamond necklace, beautiful, expensive, and exactly the kind of thing she would have bought to smooth over a problem without actually addressing it. "I came to give you this," she said, "and to invite you to Christmas dinner. Your father and I have discussed it. We want you there, as part of the family." I looked at the necklace, at the diamonds glittering under the office lights. "Mom," I said slowly, "do you know what I would have given 5 years ago for an invitation to Christmas dinner?" She blinked, confused by the question. "I would have given anything. Any amount of money, any achievement, just to feel like I belonged somewhere." I closed the velvet box. "But you never invited me. You only want me now because my success reflects on you, because you can point to me at parties and say, 'That's my daughter, the CEO,' because you need me to repair the damage to your reputation. That's not—" "Yes, it is, and we both know it. I push the jewelry box back across the desk. I don't want your gifts. I don't need your approval. I've spent the last 3 years building a life without either one. My mother's face had gone pale. You're punishing us. No, I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. I stood up. I'm not going to Christmas dinner. I'm not going to pretend that we have a relationship when we don't. And I'm not going to let you use my success to rehabilitate your image. You're throwing away your family. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just acknowledging what was already gone. I walked to the door and opened it. Sandra will show you out. My mother gathered her gift bag and stood. Her dignity was intact, but barely. At the doorway, she paused. You'll regret this, she said. When you're older, and you realize you have no one, you'll regret pushing us away. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather be alone by choice than tolerated by obligation. She left without another word. I stood in my office after she was gone, looking out at the city. She was wrong about one thing. I was not alone. I had friends, colleagues, and people who had chosen to be in my life and whom I had chosen in return. Family is not just blood. Family is who shows up. A year passed. The Morrison family social collapse was complete. My parents were no longer invited to the events they had once dominated. My father's business network had largely evaporated. My mother's charity connections had moved on to newer, shinier socialites who had no baggage. They still had money, they still had the house, but they had lost the one thing that mattered most to them: status. I watched it happen from a distance. Derek, to his credit, had used the crisis as an opportunity to rebuild himself. The divorce was finalized. He left his father's firm and took a job at a legal aid organization. The pay was less and the prestige was non-existent, but he seemed happier than I had ever seen him. We met for coffee occasionally. It was awkward at first, then gradually it became more comfortable. I'm seeing a therapist, he told me one afternoon. Working through a lot of stuff, about Mom and Dad, about Victoria, and about us. That's good. She says I need to stop trying to earn approval and start figuring out what I actually want. He smiled ruefully. Turns out I spent 40 years never asking myself that question. It's not too late to start. No, he agreed. It's not. We did not become best friends. Too much history and too much damage remained. But we built something new, something honest. It was a relationship between two adults who had survived the same dysfunctional family and were both trying to do better. Our parents did not change. I received occasional letters from them, formal and distant. They always contained an undertone of expectation that I would eventually return to the fold. I responded to none of them. On the anniversary of the gala, I got a call from Marcus Hale. Eleanor, how are you? Busy, but good. I wanted to let you know something. Your father approached me again. I felt my stomach tighten. What did he want? An introduction to our portfolio company CEOs. He positioned it as wanting to make amends with you by helping your professional network. And you said, I said that Eleanor Morrison was fully capable of building her own network, and that if he wanted to make amends, perhaps he should start by actually talking to his daughter instead of trying to manipulate business connections. Marcus paused. Was that okay? That was perfect. After we hung up, I thought about my father's strategy. He was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to insert himself into my success, and still unable to see me as anything other than an extension of himself. Some people never change. I had made peace with that. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. My father had a heart attack, nothing fatal but serious enough to land him in the hospital for a week. Derek called to tell me. You should come, he said. Not for him, for yourself. I don't know. Eleanor. His voice was gentle. You'll have to face them eventually. Might as well do it while he's too weak to yell. It was a dark joke, but I laughed anyway. I went to the hospital that evening. My mother was in the waiting room, looking older than I had ever seen her. The past year had taken its toll. Her hair was grayer, her posture was less regal, and she looked like a woman who had lost more than she had ever imagined possible. Eleanor, she stood when she saw me. You came. How is he? Stable. The doctors say he'll recover, but he needs rest and less stress." She looked at me. "Seeing you might help, or it might make things worse. I honestly don't know anymore." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I went into my father's room alone. He was hooked up to monitors, looking smaller somehow in the hospital bed than he had ever seemed in his office or his study. The great William Morrison was reduced to a man in a hospital gown with tubes in his arms. "Eleanor," his voice was weak, "you came. Derek asked me to. I'm glad." I sat in the chair beside his bed. We were silent for a long moment. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "while I've been lying here about a lot of things." He coughed weakly. "About you." "What about me?" "About how wrong I was." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something genuine in his eyes. Not manipulation or calculation, just sadness. I built my whole life around control, controlling the business, controlling the family, and controlling how the world saw us. He shook his head, and in the process, I lost the one person who never cared about any of that. "Dad, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "You were always different from Derek. More independent, more stubborn. You didn't need our approval, and that terrified me. I didn't know how to be a father to someone I couldn't control." "So you stopped trying?" "Yes." The word was heavy. "And that's the worst thing I've ever done. Worse than any business failure, worse than any social embarrassment." He reached for my hand. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I know it's too late. I know saying it doesn't undo 20 years of damage, but I needed you to know." I looked at his hand on mine, wrinkled and spotted with age. It was the hand of a man who was finally facing his mortality. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully, "but I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet." "I understand. Maybe someday, but it's going to take time." He nodded. "That's more than I deserve." We sat together in silence, father and daughter. We were two strangers who shared a name and a history, but not much else. It was not a reconciliation, not forgiveness, and not even the beginning of healing, but it was honest. And after years of lies, honesty felt like something. 2 years after the gala, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment and watched the sun set over the city. So much had changed. My company has continued to grow. We had expanded internationally, hired hundreds of people, and made a real difference in the world. More importantly, I had changed. I was no longer the woman who carried her family's rejection like a weight around her neck. I was no longer the daughter who desperately wanted approval that would never come. I was no longer defined by the people who had failed me. I was just Eleanor, a woman who had built a life on her own terms. My relationship with Derek had deepened. We talked every week now, real conversations about our childhoods, our parents, and what we wanted our own futures to look like. He had started dating again a woman he met through his legal aid work. She was someone who cared about justice and truth and making the world better, someone who would never have fit in at one of my mother's charity galas. "I think you'd like her," he told me. "Bring her to dinner," I said. "I'd love to meet her." Our parents had settled into a quieter existence. My father's health had stabilized, but he was a diminished version of his former self. My mother still maintained a small social circle, but the grand ambitions were gone. They lived in their beautiful house surrounded by memories of influence they no longer possessed. I did not hate them anymore. I did not love them either. I had reached a place of acceptance. They were who they were, they had done what they had done, and I survived it. More than survived, I had thrived. The journey had taught me something important. Revenge is not about punishment. It is about truth. It is about refusing to be silenced. It is about building a life that proves the people who dismissed you wrong. I had not destroyed my family. I had simply stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. I had let the truth speak, and the truth had been devastating. But the truth had also set me free. I thought about the woman I had been at that gala, standing behind a pillar and being told to know her place. She had felt so small, so invisible, and so worthless. And now I stood on a balcony looking out at a city full of possibilities, knowing exactly who I was. I was a founder, a leader, and a survivor. I was a woman who had learned that the most powerful place to stand is not at the top of someone else's hierarchy. It is in the center of your own life. My phone buzzed a text from Derek. "Dinner Friday. Sarah wants to bring pie." I smiled and typed back, "Perfect. Looking forward to it." I had lost the family I was born into, but I had found something better. I had found myself. And that was worth everything. Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible until you stopped needing their approval? Tell me your story in the comments. If this resonated, like and subscribe for more real power reversals. They thought knowing my place would keep me small. Turns out walking away was the most powerful place